Hello, everyone, and welcome to Get Healthy at Work's third webinar in our four-part series. As everyone will be well aware, today's webinar will focus on healthy eating at work. And we will do our absolute best to provide you with some great tips and tricks to help you and your workplace. My name is Stuart Wright, and I'm one of the Senior Project Officers on the Get Healthy at Work team, and I'll be facilitating today's webinar. Before we get into the webinar, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands in which I'm working on today. I'm joining this webinar from Camaragal land, and I would like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge that this webinar will cater for people across many different nations. Now I'm very lucky to be joined by two great panelists today. On the webinar today, we have Lisa Yates. Lisa is an advanced accredited practicing dietitian and fellow of dietitians with 25 years of experience. Her vast experience is a combination of private practice, food industry consulting, particularly in horticulture, as well as PR and marketing. So not your typical dietitian. For the last 7 months, Lisa has been working as a senior policy analyst at the New South Wales Ministry of Health in the food policy team. And our other panelist today is Dr. Stephanie Partridge. Stephanie is a senior research fellow and accredited practicing dietitian. She holds an early career fellowship with the National Heart Foundation and the National Health and Medical Research Council. Her research focuses on improving nutrition and physical activity behaviours for effective prevention of obesity and chronic diseases in young people. Her research is centred on digital health, and she has a strong focus on research translation and youth engagement in her research journey. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, how you going?
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we're just about to hear from Lisa and her presentation, but before we get stuck into it, I would like to point out that today's webinar will focus on the National Dietary Guidelines and general nutrition advice. I mean that some of today's advice might not meet everyone's specific dietary requirements. So if you do have some specific dietary requirements, it's best to see your health professional. And I would also like to point out that you can send questions through to our webinar team via the Zoom chat below. But let's not wait any longer. I'm going to pass over the control to Lisa, and she can take us through her presentation.
Thanks, Stuart, and hi everyone. Welcome again, joining us today for this Get Healthy at Work webinar. What I imagine is probably your lunch hour, so I hope you're eating something delicious and healthy, given our topic today is all about how to eat healthy in the workplace. And the workplace has changed dramatically in the last 12 months with so many of us now working from home. So I'm going to have a combination of tips to how to manage that at home, in the workplace, and also particularly if you are shift workers or managing shift workers, I think they're a particular group that also needs some assistance. So let's get stuck into it. This is what we'll cover, why workplace health is important, those healthy habits for working from home, healthy habits when on shift, healthy snacking, healthy fundraising ideas, and along the way pointing out some of the Get Healthy at Work resources. So in 2011 to 13, there was a very large Australia's Health Survey was conducted. It's the last time that we have a massive nutrition study done like that, and another one will come around soon, I'm sure, but this is the results that we have available to us at the moment. So only 1 in 14 Australians consume a diet which is aligned with the Australian Dietary Guidelines. That's 7% of Australians are actually eating the Australian Dietary Guidelines, which means 93% of us aren't following those guidelines. Specifically for New South Wales adults, 1/3 of our daily energy intake is coming from discretionary foods. And discretionary foods are those junk foods like, in this instance, cereal and cereal-based products and dishes were one of the main categories. That would be things like cakes and muffins, alcoholic beverages, which is clear, and non-alcoholic beverages like sugar-sweetened drinks, sports drinks, energy drinks, cordials, those sorts of things. New South Wales residents were also more likely to report that they snack more often compared to other states. So we're big snackers, we eat unhealthy snacks and drinks, and that's contributing to 1/3 of our daily energy intake. So what we need to do is get people, shifting those people to follow those Australian Dietary Guideline recommendations, and I'll mention some of those as we go along. So most Australians spend 1/3 of their working life at work. But as I mentioned earlier, COVID has completely changed and turned that up on its head. And the Australian Bureau of Statistics, the ABS, has been running these household impact surveys every month since March of last year. And I thought it would be quite interesting for us to have a look at some of those results. The survey was around 1,500 Australian adults in April to October, and then in November they bumped that up to 3,400. And the series of questions change month to month. So they alternate topics and themes. So I'm going to show you some various results that were from surveys from June until November last year. But if you're interested to follow up on this, the December and January results will be coming out next week. So the first question that was asked was, well, where are Australians working? And in October, 41% of Australians with a job were working from home at least one day a week. And that's risen dramatically from 12% of Australians doing that before March. And if we consider before March, before COVID, 44% of New South Wales residents specifically have been working at least one day from home. So what are Australians doing? So Australians are continuing to participate at least one or more times a week in the following activities. The blue bars are March 2020, so before COVID, and the orange bars are in October. So we're still going shopping, but we're doing it just slightly less than we were before. We're eating slightly more takeaways than we were before COVID, but we are visiting recreational areas and parks less, but we are exercising at the gym more. And I think that does reflect a lot of the public health orders and the lockdowns and so on that have impacted where people are actually, what they're actually doing. So in June, they asked what Australians have been eating during this whole COVID period. And at the time in June, 19% of us said we're drinking less soft drinks than before COVID. 14% said they're actually drinking more alcohol. 15% are drinking less, but 72 around the same amount. 22% said they were snacking more often. 14% said less, and women tend to snack more than men. 18% said more takeaways or meal services, I guess, like Uber Eats. 26% said less takeaways, which kind of makes sense because more of us were baking and cooking. I don't know how many sourdough recipes I saw in my Facebook feed. I'm sure you were the same. And 9% of people are eating more vegetables. And just on the side here, 44% of people were using some kind of screen, a computer, a TV, phone, or a device. But this has actually reduced since the height of COVID in April and May when it was 58%. So COVID has had an impact on how we're living, on how we're eating, and what we're doing. And then in November, they re-looked at how Australians have been feeling over this time period. And I think mental health is really an important part as well, especially because the results in August, the blue bars, were somewhat concerning, but luckily we've seen some improvements in how people are feeling after the November survey. So people are a little bit less nervous now. They believe that tasks are a little bit less effort to do. They're not as restless. They don't feel as hopeless. They're not so sad that they can't be cheered up, and they don't feel worthless. But it is quite concerning that COVID did have such a big impact on the mental health of Australians during this time. So whether this means we've gotten used to it, we've gotten more resilient to it, or in some cases I was reading in the survey that more people had been accessing counsellors and services to assist with their mental health. And mental health is a real interesting area for research as far as food and diet is concerned as well. And this systematic literature review came out in January of 2020, and they reviewed 61 studies looking at the impact of fruit and vegetable consumption on mental health. And the authors concluded that a high total intake of fruits and vegetables, particularly things like berries, citrus and green leafy vegetables, may promote higher levels of optimism and self-efficacy, and reduce levels of psychological distress, ambiguity, and protect against depressive symptoms. So the general recommendation to eat at least 5 portions of fruits and vegetables a day may also be beneficial for mental health. So another good reason why we should try to encourage more people to eat whole foods, particularly fruits and vegetables, for improving their mental health. So what can you do in your workplace now to improve your colleagues' ability to eat healthy whilst they're working? First up, you can think about what you've got available in your kitchens. So most places would have a fridge, hopefully a microwave, maybe a sandwich press, and just those 3 things can make homemade lunches that little bit more enjoyable because you've got options there to reheat leftovers or to just turn a ham and cheese sandwich into something a little bit more interesting if it's toasted. Also, having cold water available and a place to fill water bottles safely so you're not contaminating each other is also an option to get people to drink more water. If you have vending machines in your workplace, you might look at what drinks are being sold and try to have most drinks to be the water, diet drinks, 100% fruit juices, milks, or low or no sugar options. If you have snacking vending machines, then maybe having some healthier options in there, such as nuts and trail mixes, dried fruit, and whole grain, legume, and vegetable type crackers. You could also include products that have at least 3.5 stars, the health star rating. Here at New South Wales Health, we have a health facilities framework for providing healthy food and drink options to visitors and staff within our health facilities, like our hospitals. And the rules there roughly are 75% are healthy options and 25% are unhealthy options. And we have a service called the Healthy Food Finder, where you can identify products which would suit all of those criteria if you're interested. And healthy fundraising ideas I'm going to come to in a few slides. So let's park that one and we'll keep going. So Stu's going to do a poll for us now. So what do you consider to be the main benefits of focusing on workplace health and wellbeing? So if you'd like to just pick one option here, we'll take a few seconds to log in your options. Is it to help staff to be healthy and energised, to improve mental health, to promote the health of shift workers, improve productivity, reduce absenteeism? All right, so we've got 74% said to help staff be healthy and energised, 16% improve mental health, and 4 and 5% promote the health of shift workers and productivity. So that's really interesting. So when you're working from home, I like to recommend but I didn't mention before that I still practice as a dietitian. So 2 days a week, I still see patients and I see a lot of shift workers. But during this period of more people working from home, some of the ideas that I'm presenting here are some of the things that I know have worked for some of my patients. So some of them prefer actually to get into work mode. And that means to get dressed for the day, to potentially pack your lunch and your snacks in advance. If you're making a lunchbox for the kids, then make a lunchbox for yourself so that you're mentally switching into work mode even though you're still at home. And then at the end of the day, you can take off your work clothes, put on your play clothes and switch back into home mode for the family. You might also consider, if you pack your lunch ahead of time, you could take that and eat it outside to get some sunshine, a little bit of vitamin D. Just remember though, if you're going to be out there longer than the 5 to 10 minutes in summer sun, you want to remember to be sun safe. Having healthy snacks in the fridge and the pantry can help stop any temptation for anything unhealthy there. And similarly to the workplace, if you've got a microwave and a sandwich press at home, it can just make lunches that little bit more interesting. To get enough liquids in your day, you might keep a bottle or a jug or carafe of water on your desk, which could then remind you to try and drink as much of that as you can during your day. A standing desk at home can help reduce the amount of sitting that you might be doing, but it's still important to take regular breaks, to stand and stretch and give your eyes a rest, look into the distance rather than looking close at a screen all the time. And even something as simple as every time you're taking a phone call, just get up and move around can be a good way to just increase some physical activity and get your body moving. So what about some healthy habits when you're on shift? Shift work has its real eating challenges. So you might eat at irregular meal times because of what you're doing when you're on shift. Your eating patterns could be quite varied from day to day, which can alter your circadian rhythm or the body's rhythm. You might have limited food storage and preparation facilities available to you. You're definitely going to be exposed to more fast food takeaways and sugar sweetened beverages, SSBs. We know shift workers tend to also binge drink more often. And of course, even it's the mental health issues of just missing out on eating with family and friends and attending functions if you have to do shift work. We know that shift workers also have greater health risks. So research has shown that shift workers have an increased risk of weight gain, heart disease, stroke, high blood pressure, high cholesterol and blood glucose, type 2 diabetes. They can have digestive issues, particularly if they're eating a big meal and then going to bed soon after that, depending on when they get home from a shift, and also can have sleep problems, again, because that circadian rhythm is a bit messed up when you're working, when your body's wanting to go to sleep. So what can we do? What sort of advice can we give to shift workers? Well, because when they're out and about, they are more likely to eat foods and drinks which are high in added sugars and salts and unhealthy fats. So it's really important to avoid those discretionary foods and drinks. Try to structure your diet around waking hours. So for instance, it might mean that you're going to have breakfast at dinner time and dinner at breakfast time, for instance. Always important to try to eat a light meal before you actually go to sleep, whatever the time of that day might be. Avoiding too much coffee and sugar-sweetened beverages and trying to drink more water. Buying healthy takeaways as best you can. So you might have keep a list of the good local cafes and pubs, etc., that serve quite good meals. You might have that with you in the office, the car or the van, which might be your mobile office. And if you are in a mobile office, then you might have an esky in the car, the van, the truck, the ute, to keep healthy things that you've brought from home fresh and cold. And equally in the wintertime, you might have something like a thermos to keep things hot. And also, mental health and wellbeing is important. Even when you're shift working, you need to fit some exercise in your day sometime. Make a point of catching up with friends and family and doing something fun. And if you are in charge of any workaholics, then you might encourage them to go home as well. So Stu's going to put up our second poll now, which is all about what is your favourite snack to eat? All right, so the winner there was actually eating a handful of nuts, 27%, but 20% not far behind is fruit, a coffee for 20%, and then a chocolate bar at 9%. So that rounds out, and eggs, top 5 there. That's good because if we move on again, we'll talk about some healthy snacking options. The Get Healthy at Work website, which is gethealthyatwork.com.au/resources, has lots of great fact sheets and posters available, and there's a couple of really good ones for ideas for healthy savoury snacks and healthy sweet snacks that you can see on the screen there. It's a good idea to try and avoid grazing, which is where you're snacking every 1 to 2 hours. You're more likely to take in more calorie or energy than you need. Than if you have set meal times or try to eat every 3 to 4 hours. So if you're on shift, you might think about having a main meal in the middle of your shift and then having some kind of snack 3 or 4 hours on either side of that. And again, all of those things that were just on screen, fruit, nuts, trail mix, boiled eggs, cans of tuna with and without mixed beans, you can now buy those. Veggie sticks and dips with hummus, avocado, tomato salsa, small tubs of natural yogurt with berries, whole grain crackers and cheese, muesli bars, English muffins, raisin toast, milk coffees, smoothies, and water. So some kind of nutritious snack can really contribute to vitamins and minerals and antioxidants, as well as keeping up your levels of low GI carbs and proteins. Even before we came on today, I snacked on a little container of carrots and celery with some hummus. As I mentioned, we were going to go through quickly some healthy fundraising ideas. So fundraising is obviously a very important part and can help your organisation, plus also promote a community cause or even just increase staff morale. But it's really important to try to avoid generating some mixed healthy messages. So you're trying to encourage everyone to eat healthy, but then you're running, selling chocolate bars or a sausage sizzle, which may not be considered quite as healthy. So some other ideas, and the fact sheet has loads more, but you might hold a raffle or an auction with active prizes, so some kind of new experience. You can have trivia nights, active challenges where people are, collecting steps on their pedometer or Fitbit, doing laps of the pool or running laps of the local park. You could sell first aid kits, sunscreens, and hand sanitizers. It will seem not go out of fashion anytime soon, I'm sure. You could organize a gardening club with selling seeds and seedlings. Hold regular casual for a cause day and ask people to donate a gold coin. Specialty health days and weeks like Daffodil Day. You could create an organisational digital cookbook and all the staff can contribute a recipe and then a small donation to get the booklet or hold some kind of cook-off. So there's lots of ideas with that included in that fact sheet if that's something that's of interest to you. And this is just another reminder to just make sure you go to the Get Healthy at Work website. Everything I've spoken about today, I'm sure there's a fact sheet on it. There's healthy snacking ideas, shift work, and on-the-go meals and snacks, the fact sheets that you can see here. So that's it for me. And I know we're going to have a panel now with Stephanie as well, and we're more than happy to answer any of your questions. Thanks, Stu.
Thanks, Lisa. Fantastic presentation. That was really good, really informative. And I can probably quickly announce that I did see Lisa eat some of those veggie sticks before the presentation, so I can certainly vouch for her there. Look, there were so many great bits of advice for us to kind of digest from that presentation, some of which I'm sure we'll dive into deeper now that we move into the discussion section of our webinar. So to begin with, we're going to have the final poll for today. So the final poll is just going to get a bit of a vibe for how the audience feels about workplace health in general. So the question is it possible for a workplace to assist workers to eat healthier? So yes, no, or unsure. So yes, we had an overwhelming 94% of people suggest that it is possible for a workplace to assist workers to eat healthier. So that's a great attitude, and look, hopefully that will kind of influence some of the questions and responses we have coming up. So to begin with, I'm going to throw the first question to Stephanie. So Stephanie, can you please help us out with this one? What is the best starting point for a workplace to support its workers to eat healthy?
Thanks, Stu. Well, Lisa's already covered some really great points in her presentation around, having a healthy kitchen and having those basic pieces of equipment in the kitchen to help their staff, as well as healthy vending machines and those wonderful fundraising ideas. I know we've done some of those at our workplace, like the cookbook challenge and the being active challenges, which have been really fun. But I think one of the things that we could think about as we move back into maybe a more normal workplace, maybe when you start going back into the office a bit more and you might start hosting more catered events, is looking at developing a catering guideline for your organisation. And I know that there's some information on the Get Healthy at Work. One of the resources has some excellent tips around that. But I guess I can also speak to that point from the University of Sydney. So we have over 8,000 staff here at the university, and I was helped develop the catering guidelines that we have here for the university, so the healthy catering guidelines. And they've been really wonderful. So in those guidelines, we have an 80-20 rule. So 80% of the food that we provide for events has to be healthy. And then 20% can be, all the other foods that we all like to eat and enjoy as well. So it gives people that reassurance, I guess, that when they go to an event that they're going to have the option to eat healthy. And I think that's been really, really well received at our workplace. And to develop those guidelines, we really worked in collaboration with the people that order a lot of the food, so a lot of our executive staff. And we also worked with our preferred catering companies. So the university has 5 preferred catering companies. And as soon as we proposed this idea to them, they were, really on board. They were like, that's great. And they had so many ideas that we haven't even thought of. And the food that they provide us is, delicious and healthy. So I think that's another thing that maybe organizations can start to look at now that hopefully we're going back to a bit more of a normal workplace.
Great. Yeah, that 80-20 rule seems both very effective and very practical. I think, I really like that one. All right, I'm going to give you the next question, Lisa. So we did hear a bit from your presentation that we know that Australians find it difficult to meet the recommendation of eating 5 serves of vegetables and 2 serves of fruit a day. Do you have any tips for us to, kind of help this out in the workplace? So ways that we can eat more fruit and veg whilst at work?
Sure. I mean, if it's possible, the company could, supply a kind of a fruit and veggie tray box once a week where everybody can have a bit of a fruit bowl available in the kitchen that they can help themselves with. Some other ideas might be to develop your own staff cooperative so that you can actually buy fruits and vegetables direct from the growers. And that's certainly timely right now, where I know a lot of growers are struggling to get their product in. And as we've already mentioned, developing a staff cookbook specifically for fruits and vegetables, to boost their intake, to give them ideas and inspiration can also be really valuable.
Great. And then just diving a little bit deeper, getting a bit more specific with this question. In terms of the health behaviours of shift workers that we saw in your presentation, can you give us any specific tips for shift workers to meet the 5 serves of vegetables and 2 serves of fruit recommendation?
I think the main thing is if you're unable to get to a shop to buy something yourself, then make sure you bring it from home. So having that esky to keep things fresh and cold is really important. But then in wintertime you might have vegetable soups and things like that in an esky. So it's still quite sorry, not an esky, a thermos. So it's still quite easy to do that. But if you're going into if you're driving along and stopping, for instance, in a truck stop. We were talking earlier about, truck drivers and semi-trailers and what to do in that situation. You just need to look for, some kind of grilled protein and lots of salad or vegetables on the side. So it is possible to get more fruits and vegetables in. And something else to remember as well is I know we tend to focus so greatly on fruits and vegetables, but all whole foods are important parts of the diet. So that includes legumes and beans, nuts, seeds, whole grains. So it's not just the fruits and vegetables, which we tend to talk so much about, but it is all plant-based foods that we should eat more of.
All right, so Stephanie, would you say there's any value in work and or vegetables to their staff?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think everything that Lisa's already mentioned, so having a dedicated morning tea maybe once a week or even once a month, and if you're able to supply that fruit and veg for your staff, that's wonderful. As Lisa mentioned about food cooperatives, so we've done some research actually, and we found that people who are part of a food cooperative actually eat more fruits and veggies. So just being a part of that community really encourages you to consume more fruits and veg. But one thing maybe to think about if you're going to offer your staff fruit and veg, obviously there's a difference. So fruits we can often just purchase and then, put in a bowl and make them available for our staff. But to make vegetables a little bit more enticing, we might need a bit more time to prepare them. So maybe chopping up the carrots, celery, cucumber sticks and things like that. And then you might need some sort of dip or something just to make them a little bit more appetizing. So maybe consider that when you're thinking about this. But I can again talk from the perspective of our organisation, and I work in before COVID, a building where there was over 600 people, and our centre organised a fruit and veg morning tea every Tuesday. And people were there. Everyone came. So it was a really good opportunity for social interaction, which was wonderful. And I guess for our workplace as well, having those informal conversations about research ideas and all those kind of things was really valuable for us in terms of productivity and coming up with new research ideas. So maybe something similar around that as well, and thinking about the social aspects that they bring as well when you organise these kinds of events.
Yeah, that's great. Was that catered for by the workplace, or did everyone bring in their own little contribution?
Yeah, it was catered for the workplace, but it wasn't anything fancy. So we had bananas, apples, and just maybe oranges, mandarins. So fruits that were really easy to eat. And they also had a little bit of biscuit. So using our 80-20 rule, there was different options for different people. But the fruit always went really quickly.
Excellent. No, that's really good to hear. All right, so that will bring us into our next question. This one is a bit more of a controversial one, and basically the reverse of the previous question. Okay, so I'll start with you, Stephanie. Should workplaces avoid supplying biscuits and other unhealthy snacks in the kitchen?
I think they do have a place, but I don't think as our rule is, but they shouldn't be the dominant thing that's offered. So there needs to be, way more of the healthier food options so people have that choice, and that culture's changed then within the workplace. But I don't think they should be totally banned. But some workplaces might prefer that. But I guess it's just depends on how your workplace operates. But I think if just offering more of the healthy food, it makes it more of the norm, and then it's the easier choice for people. So that's what we're about, making it the easiest choice for people in the workplace.
Great. And would you like to weigh in on this one, Lisa? Any thoughts on this one?
The only thing I was thinking was it would be good to, I guess, ask the staff, do they want the biscuits there or not? And then you could decide yes or no. And then if we don't buy biscuits, what else will we buy? So, involving the staff in those decisions, I think is really valuable too.
Yeah, definitely. I think, as much as you can involve the staff, the better it is in the situation. I know, look, I've worked in a lot of workplaces where the supplied biscuits have been a very controversial topic. So I know that this is probably resonating with a lot of the people watching right now. So Stephanie, I'm going to throw the next question to you. Do you have any other recommendations for workplaces to encourage healthy eating beyond offering fruit and vegetables to staff?
Well, I think Lisa's already really touched on this, but I guess I am an advocate for the health and catering guidelines because I've really seen how much they've benefited our organisation. As I mentioned, catering companies can be really creative, and some of the things that they come up with are really exciting. We had all these vegetable gardens that they created for an event that we had, and people really talked about it, and it was a conversation a few days later, which is always really exciting when healthy eating becomes the topic excites a lot of people. So I think really just maybe focusing on something like that for your organisation.
Great. And Stephanie, what are some important habits you would recommend for individuals who want to eat healthier during their workday?
Yeah, again, Lisa's already mentioned a lot of great tips for us. But I think one of the things I'm working from home a bit at the moment, and I still like to, as she mentioned, prepare my lunch ahead of time. So I often often eat leftovers from the night before. So I put them in a container that I would normally take to work, and then it's in the fridge and it's ready for me to go. So after this webinar, I'll go and heat it up and have it for lunch and go sit outside and get my vitamin D as well. I as well keep water on my desk as well, but not a full container. So I often have to get up and refill it and then come back to my desk. So I'm not sitting at my desk all day. So I guess those are the two tips that I really focus on and really work for me.
Excellent. I think there's probably a lot in there in terms of the working from home recommendation you had there, where I think that applies to a lot of healthy habits where, if you used to walk to work, still having that walk before work, if you're working from home, a lot of kind of things like Lisa mentioned where you still get dressed for work, that's still very a helpful way to kind of implement those healthy behaviors even if you are working from home. So I think, it's a really valuable tip to still, put your food in the Tupperware container or whatnot, then have it ready to go at lunchtime.
In fact, Stephanie was telling us earlier that her dog is desperate for a walk.
Yes.
We're taking up the dog's walking time right now, so she's going to head off afterwards.
Yeah, so after this, we're headed out for a walk and a coffee. It'll be nice.
Perfect. A very healthy lunchtime. I like that. All right. So, Lisa, in your presentation, you talked a bit about healthy fundraising. I know that birthday cakes are a big part of workplaces, morning teas, afternoon teas, those kind of celebrations. Can workplaces still have cakes, biscuits, and those celebrations and still be a healthy workplace?
Of course they can, but you might think maybe not buy a massive slab of cake. Instead, a birthday cake could be a pile of little mini muffins or, little friands or just little bite-sized things that people can just take, little cupcakes. You could still have a fruit platter there or a really nice cheese and cracker and nuts and dried fruit platter for anyone else who doesn't want to eat the cake. I have a friend of mine who has type 1 diabetes, and when it came to her actual birthday, we knew that a cake wouldn't be appropriate. So we managed to find a bakery that could do these really lovely bread cobs that had a swirl in them. So the swirls, there was beetroot for pink, carrots for orange, and I think it was spinach for green, and it was a lovely kind of rainbow thing. We stuck a candle in that, we sliced it up, and we had bread and butter and margarine as kind of a birthday celebration for her. Obviously, if someone had gluten-free, you would look for gluten-free options. So I think tailor it to the specific needs of the person who's having the birthday, but make sure that there's options available for everyone depending on what their needs are.
Look, wonderful and delicious. I like that tip a lot, Lisa. All right, so we've talked a lot about these healthy catering policies. Lisa, how would you say that workplaces should assist their workers to know about the healthy catering policies so that there's wide knowledge of it?
I think you can always start, and I'm sure Stephanie can chime in here on how the Sydney Uni ones were developed, but I would imagine that having some kind of committee to kind of work on them together gives the staff some input into what this whole catering guidelines are going to look like. And then to launch whatever you've come up with, you could have a fun specialty week where you're going to have the healthy eating week to launch them. You might have some trade displays with some healthy food options. You might be purchasing a new piece of equipment for the kitchen. So you could kind of make a big go of it that we're doing something really special in the workplace for everyone. Stephanie, what happened at Sydney Uni? How did you guys develop the catering guidelines?
So we worked in collaboration with the main people that order all the catering. So these are the most of the executive or professional staff who know exactly what people eat and exactly what they like. And these are the key people that we needed to talk to. So they were heavily involved in developing the guidelines. And as I mentioned, we also worked, given it's a large organisation, we have preferred caterers. So we worked in collaboration with them. Obviously, they wanted to keep the business because obviously pre-COVID, there was a lot of events. So they were, and these companies, that's what their job is, to create delicious food. So they were very on board with, coming up with ideas we haven't even thought of. And now it gets really exciting when we're like, oh yes, we get to use that company, and we'll get, these really amazing fritters and rice paper rolls and all these kind of delicious things, aside from the standard like sandwich or something that you might traditionally think of as the healthier option. They come up with all kinds of different things. So working in collaboration with all the different people that you need to develop the guidelines, and then everyone's on board and excited about them.
Sounds good.
Great. All right. Well, we've got the next question coming up, which I think, Stephanie, you'll be particularly qualified to respond to. Not only do you have a PhD in nutrition, but obviously spending a long time as a student, you would have had to have considered the your wallet a lot. So what are some tips that you have for those who want to eat healthy at work but don't want to spend a large portion of their wages doing so?
Yeah, it's a great question, Stu. I think the first thing is you have to ignore all the hype around healthy. So often on like our social media feeds or in the newspapers and things like that, we're always seeing that we need to buy green powders or we need to buy these really expensive supplements to eat healthy, and it's just not the case. You just need to eat your fruit and veg and make sure that you're limiting a lot of those junk foods that we spoke about before. But I guess one of the biggest tips that I have, especially for people who are on a budget, as well as people who just generally want to eat healthier, is to eat more legumes. I mean, these are really wonderful vegetables that we often forget about. So these are things like lentils and chickpeas. So they're a really good source of fiber and protein. And you can buy a can of lentils or chickpeas, the home brand from the supermarkets, and they can be less than $1 a can. So it's so cheap to buy these. And one of the things that I like to do is to make maybe spaghetti bolognese, and you can use half what you would usually do as the mince meat and replace that with the lentils. And a lot of people, even my dad, who's a massive meat eater, whenever I do that, he doesn't even really know the difference that they're in there. So that's really good. And another thing that we've been doing recently is roasting chickpeas from the can. So just drying them, putting your favorite spices on top, a little bit of oil in the oven, and you bake them. And they're a wonderful snack that you can have during your work day, and you can take them to work, or you can put them on salads and things like that. And actually, I run a study with teenagers at the moment, and actually, teenage boys love this. So I'm really surprised that they really enjoyed this recipe as well. And another thing that we've done is some more research was around online food delivery, and we actually found that when we looked at healthier options versus unhealthy options, we actually found that their healthier options were actually cheaper on the online food delivery services. So things like Uber Eats and Menulog and those kind of platforms. So if you are choosing the healthier option, it's going to be cheaper for you as well.
Great, that's particularly valuable.
I would say that's really interesting, isn't it? Because when you think about how many restaurants have had to pivot their businesses because of COVID, that they're making their usual food and making that available through delivery. So yeah, there's no reason why you can't get good food and at a reasonable price. It also reminded me several years ago, I looked at as a disclaimer, I have done lots of work for the Australian horticultural industry. And as you all know, when you shop for fruits and vegetables, there's a price per kilo, $6 for a kilo of apples, et cetera, et cetera. So we thought, wouldn't it be interesting if the whole supermarket was sold as a price per kilo? And so you might be interested that Tim Tams, for instance, were about $29 a kilo at the time. This was probably about 5 years ago. Smith's chips, I think, were about $19 a kilo. So when you start seeing it that way, some nuts at $12 a kilo or even apples at $6 a kilo don't sound that expensive. But, we're so used to seeing these small packages, which could be about 100 grams, that, when you think about a price per kilo, they're enormously expensive. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an incredible bit of mental economics. That's really a really good way to kind of pitch the supermarket. All right, so we are close to finishing up this webinar. Look, what I might do is I might begin with you here, Lisa, and just ask, do you have any general kind of nutrition tips that you have for the general population? Some things that you would, a top line kind of recommendations you'd help, I guess, provide people to help eat and snack healthily?
I suppose one of the things that for many years I worked for the nut industry, so I am a massive lover of nuts, and I don't think Australians eat enough nuts. I come from a nut eating family, so I've always eaten them. I particularly love cracking nuts from the shell because it reminds me of my grandparents. And I think those formative years and those memories that we have of the types of foods that we seem to create those long life healthy eating habits. So I think, whatever you do now, you should also do with your kids to create some really healthy eating habits for them in the long run. Yeah, but yes, eat a handful of nuts every day. That's my tip.
Great. And Stephanie, do you have any tips for the audience?
Oh, I think it's just the simple fruit and veg. If you can increase those even by a serve a day, that's wonderful, and that will do so much benefit for your overall health. I guess that's my biggest tip. Keep it simple. Focus on the fruit and veg.
Excellent, great. Look, this is probably a good time for me to quickly mention a few things related to Get Healthy at Work and some of the online resources we have. So look, Get Healthy at Work is a completely free online program available to all workplaces in New South Wales. The website, as well as our Get Healthy at Work team, can support you to develop workplace health programs that can focus on specific health areas, including healthy eating. And there are lots of great resources to support your workplace health programs. And there are lots of great healthy eating resources. So to register or to check out those resources, all you have to do is go to gethealthyatwork.com.au. And this is probably a good time for me to also mention the Get Healthy service. So the Get Healthy service is a great over-the-phone health coaching service that is offered by New South Wales Health. It's completely free, and there are many different areas of health that you can focus on, one of which does include healthy eating. So if you're looking for some free health coaching over the phone, just go to gethealthynewsouthwales.com.au. Look, I think we had lots of great tips and tricks and advice throughout the presentation and the webinar today. Some that stood out for me. Look, it's clear that the healthy eating policy is a very effective tool to use at a workplace. The 80-20 rule seems like a very practical but effective tool. And look, I think it shows that you can still keep the celebration at the workplace too. So I think it's important that you keep that, and the social aspects that Stephanie was talking about that they still had with their fruit and vegetable morning teas every month sounded fantastic. I think the other tip in there that really stood out to me was making sure that you're prepared. So whether you're working from home or whether you still going into the office or you're working on the road, always having that esky, that thermos, or that Tupperware container full is a great way to start your healthy eating kind of approach for the year or for the week. And look, I also love the tip from Stephanie about the legumes and lentils, adding some spice, spending less than $1 a can. I think that's fantastic way to save some money and still be healthy in the process. So Lisa and Stephanie, thank you so much for joining the webinar today. Lisa, thank you so much for your presentation. I really enjoyed the webinar. I hope that our audience also really enjoyed the webinar. That brings us to the end for today. We do have another webinar coming up on the 16th of March. We'll get to focus on physical activity in the workplace and how to be more active before, during, and after work. But until then, thank you very much for joining today's webinar.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.